Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you find yourself today. It's another beautiful day. It's snowing here, but I always say don't let the day determine your mood. So long as you have life, it's a beautiful day. I want to welcome all of you to today's Leadership Academy. I know it's going to be another day of some emotional and intellectual discourse, because I know Prof is ready to release. So we are here to learn. As usual, on this platform, we don't insult. We don't entertain insults. On this platform, we share and discuss ideas. So if you have an opinion, if you have an idea, you can table it respectfully and we will discuss it. You don't have to agree with us, but we can both disagree or agree respectfully and discuss issues. Today, we are going to continue with the discussion we started, talking about the corruption in Africa, that cancer called corruption in Africa. We are going to continue the effects of these practices, malpractices on the continent of Africa, how far these practices have affected the continent negatively. That's what we're going to be talking about today. We started last week, but before we jump on or we jump into today's discussion, I just want to, our usual, I would say mantra, we always want to remind ourselves that creativity and inventions are not by the color of one's skin, but by an educated mind. I want to repeat, creativity and inventions are not by the color of one's skin, but by an educated mind. So irrespective of the color of your skin, if you educate yourself, if you give yourself to wisdom and understanding, you should be able to create and invent. With that being said, once again, you're welcome to Leadership Academy. My name is Nana Osei Bonsu Jr. of Afriwick International Organization and Certo Leadership International. And my co-host, I'll let him introduce himself.
Yeah, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you may be. My name is Kwaju of Certo Afriwick. And you can see that I'm still driving. I'm not home yet, but I needed to get in on this, and we are going to talk about corruption and its effects in Africa. Thank you.
You are welcome, Prof. All right, I just want to give a little recap, and then we will zoom into today's discussion. Last week, we spoke about the fact that one of the areas corruption is affecting Africa negatively is education. We spoke about the fact that if you are going to beg for money from somebody and the person knows you're not going to use it wisely or you're going to misuse that money, one, it does not even give you the confidence to negotiate. Two, it tells you the person will tell you what to do with that money. And in that sense, they are not going to let you use the money for something profitable that would deprive them of their profit. Because trust you me, the Western world, the powers that be, are very much interested in the status quo of Africa as of now. They are benefiting from the confusion. They're benefiting from the chaos. They're benefiting from the corruption. As a matter of fact, they introduced the corruption to the continent, which we're going to be talking about that some time to come. It's one of the topics we're definitely going to talk about, how corruption became or was prepared. I love to use these words, was cooked and dropped on the lap of Africa, you know, and exactly how it was planned and the effects is what is going on today, is what we're seeing today. So one of the areas by which Africa can be liberated, or Africa can be enlightened to begin to change its course from the status quo and begin to progress, is education. And for now, what we have is not an educational system. For now, we have a schooling system, and the schooling system benefits the Western world. It benefits. I was watching a video today just before I jumped on this call, and this lady was talking about, without Africa, there will be no Europe. Without Africa, there will be no America. Without Africa, there will be no whatever powerful state or country you can think of, because they are all feeding off of Africa's wealth. That is why on this platform, we don't believe that Africa is a poor continent. As a matter of fact, it's the wealthiest continent on earth, because as we were discussing last week, that $150 billion is stolen from the continent of Africa. How can you steal 150 billion from somebody who is poor? It doesn't make sense. So it is because of mismanagement. It's because of corruption. That is why we are in the state we find ourselves in today as Africans. So we spoke about one of the areas where corruption affects us most is education. And so our educational system, or our schooling system, has been one of the areas that it cannot be reformed, or it's not been allowed to be reformed, because it's serving the interests of our colonial masters. Again, we also spoke about the fact that $150 billion is siphoned out of Africa every year. And this is the amount that has been captured. The one that has not been captured, it's another story. But if we are talking about 150 billion as against us going outside to beg for, I believe, $25 billion, it really doesn't make sense. It does not add up. You are losing 150 billion every year. And then every year you go out there and borrow or beg for 25 billion. It does not add up. And so if we really want to progress as Africans, if we really want to progress as a continent, we need to tackle the corruption issue. We need to try as much as possible to have leaders who would understand that sealing the leakage of money going out of Africa is very paramount. And we spoke about the fact that Magufuli did it in Tanzania. He did not borrow a dime from the international community, and yet he was building schools, building railways, building hospitals. I mean, doing marvelous things in Tanzania, and yet he did not borrow. How did he do that? By cleaning up the corruption in the system, by cleaning up the mess within the system, and he was able to retrieve money from the mess into the coffers of Tanzania for development. And so today, one of the areas I want us to be looking at, talking about the effects, I want Mr. Kujua to get on whilst I get on Facebook to straighten up the Facebook. I've not been able to post today's discussion on Facebook because I'm talking, and I'm not smart enough to multitask. So I want Mr. Kujua to jump on whilst I straighten up the Facebook page. All right, over to you, Prof.
Yeah, Nana, we all know this issue of our education system that sort of trains us to be bean counters. People will be able to write how many tons of cocoa that we have been able to produce, primary production, how many tons of yams, how many tons. You know, practically the Western world wants us to be producers of raw They will pick it up, transform it into finished product that adds about another 70% of value to our raw products and bring back and sell it at a higher price, so that at every point in time they are reaping the benefits of what we produce. I don't know if you ever watched that video of Singapore, one of the prime ministers, or it was a business leader that was telling that they don't produce any coffee. They don't have coffee in Singapore, but they have some of the best-selling coffee brands in the world, because they come to Africa, they go to the Caribbean, they go to the Spanish world, and they buy the coffee beans, and they have trained their people to actually manufacture the best brands of coffee, and they come back and they sell it to us at astronomical, profitable prices that we, the crop growers, don't get to do. So the question that we should continue to ask ourselves is that why is it that we have this kind of an education system that produce only being counters but not thinkers? Because total education is the ability to make a human being compliant or adapted to his environment. So your whole education is to make you solve problems that you see in your community, and we don't see that happening across Africa. You see, simply because we are learning things that are basically useless. What is the use of knowing the name of a river somewhere when you don't really know how to protect that river? Why is it that our forefathers used to live there for years, and these rivers have their indigenous names, but we call it something Victoria Waterfalls, as if we didn't have a name for it for a white man or a Caucasian to see. I mean, that's a topic for discussion on another day, but what I really wanted to digress into as one of the effects of corruption is I don't know if we are allowed to do that today, or we are going to take a different topic each week, like we said. If we are okay with the understanding that when we need money to change our educational system, nobody to whom this schooling system is benefiting is going to give us money. That is very simple, and we should be able to understand that.
Go ahead, bro.
Okay. The second thing that I wanted us to talk about is the corrosive and eroding effects of corruption on confidence in our governing systems. You go anywhere in Africa, anything that you want to do, things that should be simple, straightforward for you to achieve, it becomes bottleneck, because unless you are willing to pay somebody an extra amount of money that never gets to the national coffers, whatever it is that you need to do will never be done. I call it artificial shortage. You might need some paperwork done in order to open a company. You might need some permit in order to move something. And believe me, you will never be able to do it unless you are willing to take a bribe. And it allows the citizenry to come to the conclusion that they cannot trust their governing officials, because unless you pay money, you're not going anywhere. That's one thing about the corrosive effect of corruption in Africa. Another aspect is also this. Every cycle of 4 years or 5 years, our political elite come to us with proposals of how they want to change our society through development. Okay, they come to us, they give us manifestos, they talk grandly about the wonderful plans they do have for the country. And within another 4 or 5 years, you find out that it's not true, because they borrow stupendous amounts of money and they tell you these are the projects they have done with, and you might cry. So the people become dejected. They really don't believe the direction in which any of our countries are going, because we see what our leaders are doing with the money, and the sums don't add up. So how will the people be behind a government that they cannot trust? So it creates this negative loop or cycle effect whereby the people cannot trust their government, so they will not put in the effort to make the government work better. And that is one of the deleterious effects of corruption, as I personally witness or I see being discussed on the African continent. That's where I want
it's interesting you brought in the issue of trust, because that is the angle I wanted us to look at today. Because I was watching some excerpts of Nigeria's election, and they were showing some of the polling stations where, quote in quotes, thugs go over to stop the elections, and it's bringing about chaos and mistrust in the people, thinking that the election is going to be stolen, or the verdict is going to be stolen, or the verdict has already been stolen, and that they don't trust the system. And it's mind-blowing. It's all because of these corruption. And you see, let me even backtrack. This corruption going on within the continent makes even kids believe that the only way you can succeed is to get yourself into office, into some corridors of power, into some political circles, to be able to make money and succeed. So that alone builds the foundation of mistrust of the people for those in authority. Because everybody, I heard, I think he was about 17, 18-year-old boy who said, you know what, with all these elections, this is how they had to do it. Just make a law or pass a law that every family would ascend to the throne for a year. And he was talking about Ghana. He said, just pass a law that every family would ascend to the throne for a year and leave. Make the money and make yourself comfortable, make yourself and your family comfortable within that 1 year, so another family can come. And to him, that is how you can share the national cake. So if such a youngster has this perception about people going into politics or people in power, which means that they believe that whatever you are doing in office is not to the benefit of the people, but to the benefit of yourself and that of your family. So they don't even trust that you have their interest at heart in the first place. And one of the things that mistrust will breed is what we're seeing: chaos. People don't even trust that the elections are going to be free and fair. Why? Because of corruption within the system. The people cannot find somebody they can trust within the corridors of power. They can't find honest people. They can't find people of integrity. So they believe that because you are not a person of integrity, you are going to steal the verdict. And in that sense, it brings chaos. Because I saw just a few, about 2 or 3 polling stations where it's just chaotic, and the people were just making noise and throwing stuff, and I mean, crying foul even before the elections are over. You know, so these are some of the things corruption will breed. and it's breeding on the continent of Africa. Most of the fights, most of the civil wars is all out of corruption. It's all out of corruption. It's the effects of corruption, because it creates mistrust in the people, and they want to rebel against the government, and the government want to stay in power to still loot and steal from the people. So they will do everything possible by hook or crook to stay in power. And it creates confusion on the continent of Africa. So some aspects of the effects of corruption is the mistrust, which leads to chaos and confusion on the continent of Africa. I just want to pause here. I want to give Henry, you're welcome to Leadership Academy. I realize you've unpaused, you've unmuted yourself. I don't know if you have some questions or you have a contribution to make. You're allowed to do that. So.
Yeah, thank you, Nana.
You're welcome, sir. It's been a while.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I've been around anyway. Yeah. Yeah.
Any contribution or questions or?
I'm actually enjoying the forum, but yeah, we hear corruptions over and over many years back, and so as I'm listening to you and Professor Kojo, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my mind is going to something that if we believe corruption is affecting a lot of, our people back home, okay, the entire Africa, I should say. So what we need to think of now, solutions, remedies. What do we do to mitigate the corruption in Africa? So that's what is echoing through my mind. So I just want to bring it out. So maybe not this for maybe in the future, maybe you can look at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. If you follow our discussions on the platform, you realize that we don't just talk about problems, we talk about solutions as well. And we've in the past spoken about imbibing principles, cultivating principles and stuff like that, which would cause us to be men and women of principles. And in that sense, we prepare ourselves for leadership. And when it's time for us to serve, we'll be able to serve our generation diligently without any blame. So yes, that's important, an important point you made. And on this platform, we believe in solutions. We talk about the problems and we provide our 2 cents as to how best the issues can be solved. So thank you so much for that submission.
Yeah.
So as I was saying, if we really don't sit up and take care of this issue, let me digress a little bit. I was watching a video this week. I'm not sure if Prof, you were the one who sent me the video. It was about TED Talk, a little boy giving a TED Talk, and the boy was talking about the fact that Africa, he was basically talking about the potentials of Africa. And this is a British boy who is probably not a teenager yet, probably maybe 10, 12, 13. So one of the things that was running through my mind is, at this age, he has been educated, or he has been indoctrinated about the potentials of Africa. So what do you think is going to happen when he gets into a position of power, he's going to devise a means to feed off the potential of Africa to the benefit of Britain, not to the benefit of Ghana or to the benefit of Cote d'Ivoire or to the benefit of Nigeria or to the benefit of South Africa or Kenya or Tanzania or Malawi, but to the benefit of Britain. You see, most of the people who were listening to the TED Talk were excited about the fact that he was talking about the potentials of Africa, our natural resources, our youthful population, and all this stuff. And they're thinking that it's going to benefit. He's talking in favor of Africa. But I saw a different picture, that at this age, 10, 11, 12, 13, being indoctrinated about the power and the potential of Africa, when he gets into office or when he gets into a position of power, he is going to find a way of tapping into that potential to the benefit of Europe. And sometimes it saddens. That is why we spoke about education and schooling. You know, if our kids have been educated to understand the potential and the power of that continent, it will shape their thinking and it will inform their process, their thinking process, to be able to tap into that power to the benefit of Africa. You see, so the corruption thing we're talking about, it's so endemic and it's so cancerous that we can't even see it. And as we said, last week we spoke about the fact that it's affecting our educational system. And today we're talking about it's affecting trust on the continent. And so we are actually pleading, that especially we can start from all angles, parents, teachers, whoever, but especially, I don't know, but I'm a believer that charity begins at home. If parents can begin to educate their kids, imbibe the values and principles into these kids, because that is where it will change from. It will change by having men and women of principles in places of power, in offices. Men who understand leadership, who knows the value of leadership, and they know the importance of that office, the leadership office. And they know that it's not for any reason why they occupy that office, but for the benefit of the community. One very good example I love to use is that the orange does not bear fruit for itself. The fruits of the oranges, or the orange tree does not eat of its fruits. But guess what? The community benefits of the orange fruit. So if we really want to understand the leadership in that perspective, we would know and understand that we are in office not for ourselves, but for the people. And so until we begin to set principles and our priorities right, we are unable to defeat or to fight this cancer called corruption, because it is eaten into the fabrics of our society. It is creating confusion, commotion, mistrust, uneducated people, schooled people. And it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. It's not a good thing. So we're pleading with parents, especially. Even at home, sometimes we can lie to our kids. Some of the corruption starts from home, which we have to be careful. Let's be principled. If it's A, it's A. If it is B, it's B. Because the kids see what we do. Sometimes we think we're telling them what they're supposed to be doing, but they're not just listening, they are watching as well. So please, let's begin to pay attention to some of these things. If we really want to deal with this cancer, we really have to start by imbibing principles and values into our youth, because they are going to be the next generation to carry the mantle of leadership. All right, Mr. Kojo, any?
Yeah, Nana, it's wonderful that you brought out this issue about potentials. When the colonial masters sat down and decided to divvy us into small countries and territories for management, it was because they perfectly understood the potential of Africa. And, we started fighting for these.
And they are teaching their kids.
Yes, and we at AfriWeek we understand the issue of principles, okay? And nothing happens by chance. It is not happenstance. Things happen because there was something and there is an effect. There is the things on this level, as far as development is concerned, it is not by chance. They perfectly understand the potentials of Africa. But we as Africans, we've been talking about potentials for at least 15 years. How long are we going to talk about potential? When are we going to actually put in place the structures that will make the potential become reality? And one of the best ways to do that is by giving good governance, good leadership, so that your people can trust you. Now, it will create that positive cycle whereby, because you do the right thing and I trust you to do the right thing, I will support you in doing the right thing, so that as time goes on, there is progress. What we are seeing today as a result of mistrust, like what you are saying is happening in Nigeria, it happens too much often in Africa. A mundane thing like an election, where people should just go to the polls, cast their vote, go home and wait for the results. They are fighting. People get guns, and simply because they don't trust the leadership. Why don't they trust the leadership? The leadership have shown over the years that they cannot be trusted because they can be bought. They have a price. There's no dignity to leadership when there is the issue of bribery and corruption crops up. And that is where the issue is. As long as your citizens don't trust you, because by your repeated behavior, you cannot be trusted. You can simply be bought. There will always be chaos and there will always be no development in the area. African people are just asking for their leaders to provide basic amenities, basic, at affordable prices. Once you do that, the people themselves will elevate their societies. But individuals cannot solve communal problems. And that is where we are today. The reason why Nigerians, instead of just going to cast their votes, will have tax at polling stations, because they know the elections can be bought at the highest level. And why is that? Corruption. Systems are corrupted, officials are corrupted. And if that happens, people will not trust their government. And that's simply what we have been trying to say all along, that this cancer called corruption needs to be uprooted and eliminated. Otherwise, we will not go anywhere. Thank you. That would be my thanks.
Thank you so much. Any other submissions? I don't see any questions or Anything from Facebook? Yeah, I don't see anything from Facebook. If we don't have any other submissions, I would want to say that we would have to give our closing remarks, and we'll continue next week. So Prof, I should have asked you to just add your closing remarks to.
Okay, what I would want to say is this. Leadership is everything. Okay, there's leadership and then there is effects. As Africans, we should demand that our leaders should show us leadership. That is what we should demand. They should show us leadership. They should put in place systems that will allow individuals and organizations to be rid of corruption. That is the way it should. Otherwise, we will keep repeating the cycle. The same thing that we said 20 years ago, we will say it 30 years from now, we will say it 100 years from now. And that will be my final submission. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Henry, do you have anything to add up before we draw the curtains to a close for today?
Yes, Nana. What I would like to say is that, yeah, you talk about to educate our children. Yeah, is a valid point, but you see, it has to do with our mentality. You see, renewal of our mind. You can be highly educated, but if you don't renew your mind, you go there and you definitely, commit a crime or the corruption will go on. So leadership here, yeah, it's not about this my friend, this my brother, so you can, be a leader to this company. No. When we are choosing a leader, we should look for one quality, charisma, somebody who should be charisma. You see, so when we get people like that into the community or society, I think it go a long way to alleviate this kind of corruption in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. Thank you so much for being a part of this episode of Leadership Academy. Yeah, we spoke about putting people in power, and we spoke about Henry made mention of the fact that people can be highly educated and still will be corrupt. I'm sorry, but you cannot be highly educated and be corrupt. If you are educated, you have a deeper understanding on a different level to serve. It's mostly people being schooled to a certain level and they get corrupt. When you're schooled to a certain level and you're not educated, you're bound to be corrupt. Because there's a difference between being schooled and being educated. And I think Prof defined education from his earlier submissions. It gives you an understanding of what needs to be done within your environment. And it gives you an understanding that your gift is supposed to go into service to better your community. And that's simply an educated person. When you go through school, it tells you what to do. And when you come out, you do exactly what you're being told to do in school. And that is to serve the interest of other people. And so when you realize you're serving the interest of other people, then why not serve my interest as well? So we want to thank everybody for being a part of today's Leadership Academy. Next week, around same time, we're going to be here to continue the discussion of corruption in Africa. We encourage that you invite a friend to be a part of it. So together we can discuss. And enlighten ourselves in order for us to be able to serve our communities and our generation better. Again, my name is Nana Osei Bonsu Jr., and I had on Prof. Kojo Ewa Frimpong and Henry to be our hosts today. So next week, hopefully same time, same place, we'll be here to discuss the development of Africa. Catch you on the flip side. Have a wonderful
Yes,
day.
sir.
Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Right.
sir.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Prof.